Okay. Well, welcome everybody. My name is John Elliff, and we're doing an interview today with Julius B. Wernsman. Julius is going to tell us about his episodes and life in World War II as a bomber pilot in Europe, and what happened to him there and later on. So, welcome, Julius, and tell us your name.
My name is Julius Wernsman, and I live out right now at Haxton, Colorado.
Okay. Now, just tell us how you got in the service and kind of how things went with you. Can you do that?
Well, like I say, I started after I got out of high school. I graduated in '39, and I went to work for Keith Bunker in the summer of '39. In the fall, I needed another job, so I looked in the papers, and we found a ad for Alhambra College out at
You off on that?
Sheet Metal College in Alhambra, California, and from there I got a job in Consolidated Aircraft down at San Diego, California, working in the wing department on B-24s, and I stayed with them a couple of years till the draft board announced that I was on 1A. So I decided I didn't want to walk in the Army, so I decided I'd try for the Air Force. So me and my buddy that I was living with, we went out to Omaha, Nebraska, and enlisted in the cadet program, and that was in. Let's see here. That in November of '41, I went to Omaha, Nebraska, and then I was called to active duty in February. I always say Birthington's Horse Day because Washington's birthday. That's when I had to. Then I had to report to duty. I quit in the meantime, I worked at I was an inspector, Air Force inspector for B-25s in Omaha, Nebraska. And then I quit that job about 2 weeks before I had to report, went home, and for a leave, I always call it like a leave, in a way. And I reported into Denver on February 22nd. Then from there we went to St. Louis, Missouri, to Jefferson Barracks. That's quite a place. If you want to get cold, go to Missouri in February. You had 30 degrees on the thermometer, felt like 50 below. And our huts, we couldn't call them barracks, huts had cracks in them, and we had half a dozen people who went down with pneumonia. They was in what we call pneumonia gulch. Anyway, we had basic training at Jefferson Barracks, and then being I hadn't gone to college, there was a bunch of us that hadn't gone to college. We signed up for the Air Force, and you had to have supposedly 2 years college in order to become a pilot and a navigator and all that stuff. Anyway, I went to CTD training in St. Louis. There was an old garage that somebody decided they were going to call it a college, so they got some kind of a deal with the government that they were called a college. So we went there for about roughly 6 to 8 months, and then after we graduated from that's supposed to be 2 years of college.
That was your 2 years of college.
Yeah. Anyway, after we got that, then we went to San Antonio, Texas, to the cadet center down there, and was evaluated what we was going to be. And I checked out 90-some% to be a bombardier, 80-some% to be a navigator, and 70-some% to be a pilot. And I said, I joined this dang thing to be a pilot, so I'm taking my chances. So they let me go ahead as a pilot. And then from there, we went to Vernon, Texas to primary training, and we passed out all right. It was fun. It was
What now?
open air
When you did that at yeah, go ahead. What kind of airplanes were you flying in, Vernon?
Primary PT-19, I guess, twin engine, not twin engine, twin cockpit. The instructor is in back and the cadet out in front. And we learned all the maneuvers and stuff. We did some buzzing on the farmlands around Vernon, Texas, and cross-country stuff. Learned all the stuff, except we didn't have any instrument pilot training. That all came later. Anyway, from there, I went to Enid, Oklahoma to basic training in the airplane that we always called the Vultee vibrator.
The what? Oki vibrator?
Vultee vibrator.
Vultee.
It was built by Vultee Airplane Company, and I forget what the number there was they called it. Anyway, when he's down there, then they was learning some more acrobatics and stuff like that, how to get all these planes to come out of their spins and doing the loop-de-loops and all that stuff. And down there one time, I was up to 7,000-8,000 feet. I was going to put this plane in the spin.
Yeah.
Practicing coming out of the spin. And I went through the procedure. You have to put your dang nose down, get the flight some speed up, so the controls will take a hold. And I went through that and pulled back, and the dang thing didn't come out. So I had to do it all over again. But I got it out of there before I hit the ground. That was a kind of a
little scary deal.
Hair-raising experience on that. Made me wonder about.
So were you by yourself on that
flight?
Yeah. You were up practicing.
Yeah, just practicing.
Yeah.
And another time we took off with flying formation. The flight instructor is out in front, and a couple of us guys is on the wings at flying. And we was flying along there and making the different speeds. You have to put your flaps down to so you wouldn't overrun them and all that stuff like that. And I got to cranking on my flaps, and they wouldn't work. And I couldn't slow down. So the instructor says, we had a salt flat out there with an emergency landing. So he says, let's head for the salt flats. So I landed that plane at really buzzed in there. I couldn't slow it down. So
right. No flaps.
No flaps. I went in there probably about 160 miles an hour.
Wow.
We made it. And it was really nice. It was fun. I almost wanted to go back and try it again.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Anyway, that worked out all right. Then we graduated, I guess, from basic training, then went on into Frederick, Oklahoma for advanced training. And at advanced training, you got to had to learn how to fly instruments that had your link trainers and all that stuff. And well, maybe I should say, when I was down there, I busted my bone in my wrist, the navicular bone. One morning it was frosty out, and I was going into the flight trainer, and it was on this board sidewalk, and it was slick. And of course, clumsy me, I fell down, caught myself in my left hand, busted a bone in my wrist. I didn't go to sick call. It bothered me a little bit. I didn't go to sick call. I just flew with it like that. And in the instrument flighting, I had a little instrument, let's call it a little incident, I guess. I was flying down a beacon, and all that stuff, and I was doing all right. and they on the airplane they put some kind of a isinglass on it so you couldn't see out, and you had goggles. But the instructor, he could see all right outside, and it got so hot in there that the sweat got around my eyes, and I reached up like this to get that out, and he claimed I was peeking. So I had to have another test flight. I didn't peek, but it was getting awful uncomfortable. It was really so hot in there.
So they made you do it twice.
So I do it twice, yeah. So the next time I did it, I
That's
passed
on
it all right.
an NDB, huh?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, but we went ahead and another thing up and down there while we was at Frederick, one day about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the weather forecast came up and said that there was a front coming through. And that's a kind of tornado country down there. And of course, the commanders of the thing got awful tied up about it. We got to get these airplanes out of here. So they assigned each one of us an airplane. I had one, and we had to go fly to Fort Worth to get out of the way of that front. That was my first night flight solo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was kind of spooky too.
I'll bet.
But we made it. Then we stayed overnight.
So when you flew that night flight, did you flight that, was that Dead Reckoning, or did you...
It was more Dead Reckoning. They give us a heading to go, and then of course when we got to Fort Worth, why, all them lights down there, but then you had to locate where the airport was.
See where you're going to go and sit out, yeah, of course.
The guy had a first night flight for me. In a way, that was, I guess you could call it fun. But
Was that the first time you ever landed at night?
No.
You'd landed at
night?
No,
with the instructor. We'd had a few flights, but it's first solo.
Yeah.
So.
Because night landings are different.
Oh, they're all different. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But we made it through and graduated in June of 1944. 44F, they called us. The ABC, January is A, and F is June, so that's when we graduated. Went to, I made it into second lieutenant. There was a bunch of them that made it just to flight officer. And then after that, we got a 2 or 3 week, I forget what it was, leave to go home. We went home, and one Sunday afternoon, I'm a whole ball fan anyway, so we were having a ball game out in some pasture out home. And I went to there, and I run into a gal named Mildred Locke.
Mildred Locke.
Mildred Locke, yeah. And we got to writing back and forth to each other, and eventually, after the war was over, she became my wife.
Yeah.
And
you met her out playing baseball?
Playing baseball, yeah, down there. Johnny Fox owns pasture.
Well, good for you.
Anyway, see, then after that, I reported back to I think it was like Amarillo, Texas, or something, to fly navigators. Student navigators were supposed to be, we were supposed to be the pilots, and they were supposed to tell us where to go. And they couldn't find any place for us down there. It lasted about a week. So we were transferred then to Dodge City, Kansas, to fly B-26s. Well, the same thing happened there about 3 weeks later. Why, they couldn't find a place for us, so they shipped us back to Omaha, Nebraska. And there they assigned us to a crew, B-24 crews. And so then we went to Mountain Home, Idaho. That was about a 6 months course there. Our first pilot, see, I was co-pilot. Our first pilot had already gone through training to fly B-24s, so we had to get to work together as a crew out at Mountain Home, Idaho. And that lasted about 6 months. I guess I don't know for sure just what anymore. I don't know the dates. They
Yeah,
get away
that's
from
okay.
me after a while. Anyway, from there, well, then we went to, well, they shipped us out to go overseas. And we went on the troop train to New York and port there. And we boarded this ship, the Ile de France. That's was a luxury liner, I guess, before the war, and they converted it into about a 20,000 man troop ship.
Huh?
Yeah. And it took us about a week or 8 days, something like that, to cross. And while I was on that, why, they put me in charge of a compartment, about 200 of these infantry boys. And I was supposed to, well, just be around there, you know, so they'd have somebody to holler at. Anyway, we had these abandoned ship deals. Everybody has to grab your life jacket and go up on board. And talk about a mess. These kids got seasick.
Oh, they got seasick?
Got seasick. And they was going, I didn't get seasick because I run through that one when I got in the airplane. I had that all out of my system. Anyway, these guys was heading up on, puking all the way. They're puking on each other, and talk about a mess. But they still made them go up there. Just, anyway, we lived through that. It was kind of a mess. We had to clean it all up.
I guess so, yeah.
They was puking on everybody. In fact, one of them got an officer. One of the, he tried to hold it in, and it just squirted all over the place. Anyway, while we was going across there, it came over the radio. The radio launcher says that Germans announced that they torpedoed the Ile de France. We hadn't seen anything like that. But then when we got to the English port, there was a ship with a big hole in the side. So I figured that's what they figured was the Ile de France. But the boys had a lot of fun. Our gunners, they put them on machine guns going overseas, put them on these little old nests, I guess, machine gun nests, for practice. Why? They blew up these conundrums and blew them up and set them out and tried to blow them out of the sky.
Try to blow them up. It's all right.
But, well, they had fun anyway. And the air crews, they got the top deck, and that's where we bunked down all the time. And that was, I suppose, in civilian times, was top passengers, I guess, up there. Anyway, we had an individual bunk, and we didn't have stacks. See, down in my compartment, there was eight high.
Wow.
Just fold out of the side of the wall. 8 high. You know, we didn't have nothing like that. And another reason I was glad I was in the Air Force instead of the ground force. In a way.
Well, what'd you have to do? Go down on those lower decks and supervise those guys, huh?
Yeah, I think there was 4 or 5 decks down, you know, and it's all full of these kids. I was an old man, of course. I was about 20, and they was 18, you know.
Yeah.
Like that, so in a way, we got over there. Then they shipped us to Windling, England. That is 392nd Bomb Group, and that's where I flew my missions out of Windling, England. I flew 18 missions all told, because I got over there the tail end of the war. Well, there was a whole bunch of battles over there in the English European theater, and I got in on 3 of them. And my European medal, or not medal, but thing on your blouse said European Theater of Operation with 3 battle stars. So the only one I remember about anything was the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
Of course, we didn't get in on it much, but we was there, we got credit for being in the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
In a way, yeah. and the war ended. And right off the bat, we got old Army again. They got real chicken. You had to get out certain time and march and all that stuff. So we was real glad when the orders came through to come back to the United States. They give us an airplane and we flew back. We went through Iceland. We landed in Iceland, stayed there overnight, then went to Greenland, stayed there overnight. That was kind of an experience. You'd land that airplane, and you'd go from the ocean into the ground, heading towards these big glaciers up there.
Oh yeah.
And you had to get stopped before you got to the glacier. Anyway, and taking off, you'd go up the other end, and you come back and you take off into the ocean.
Over the
Those
water.
big old floating icebergs out there. You make sure you get up in the air before you hit them things. And then we landed back in the United States at Bangor, Maine.
Bangor, yeah.
Bangor, Maine, and they reintroduced us to the United States. We had to have our physicals and all that stuff to get back in the United States. And from there, we went to Sioux Falls, South Dakota for about 5 or 6 months. And while we was there, it was harvest time. And these farmers needed people to work in the fields, so I got back in shocking oats. And
Oh, really?
yeah, Lindy, my navigator, he was an old farm boy. He knew how to do it too. So 2 of us, we shocked more oats than the rest of the guys put together.
Yeah, that makes me itch.
You ain't kidding, it makes you itch. Darndest
Oh, I
thing.
did that once, but
Yeah, darndest thing up there though, those people, all they want to do is eat. 10 o'clock they'd come out with a great big lunch. Noon you'd have to go in and eat a big dinner. 3 o'clock they was back out in the field again with the lunch. Down here in Colorado we never did that.
no.
In a way, when it comes time, they was paying us to shock. Come time to get paid off, the bunch of these guys says, "Oh heck, we don't need any pay. We was feeding us too good." Lindy and I says, "Boy, gosh, we'll take it."
That's right.
In a way, that was the end as far as the overseas deal went. And then from there, they sent me to Clovis, New Mexico, to train in B-29s. I was supposed to train and become a pilot for B-29s. That was the tail end of the war, apparently. And I looked at them dang things, and it was completely different than the B-24.
Oh yeah.
So I decided, well, heck fire. This arm is bothering me. I'll go on sick call. So that started the whole thing about they x-rayed my wrist, said that navicular bone was broke, and it hadn't grown together. So they put my arm in a cast for 6 months. And I'd had nothing to do, just loaf around the base. They didn't give me anything to do. And after 6 months, they took the cast off. Of course, my hand got so stiff I couldn't move the cotton picking thing. And they decided, well, heck, it didn't do any good, so they operated on it. And they took half of the navicular bone out. And to recuperate from that, they sent me to Spokane, Washington. And I was up there for taking therapy, I guess, getting me so I could move my arm again. And that took 4 or 5 months to do that. And from there, they shipped me to Salt Lake City, and that's where I got my discharge. Of course, when I was there, I signed up for the reserves, for the reserves, and I stayed in the service in the reserves for 20 and a half years. That about takes care of all of where I was going. And,
When you now you were telling me you guys flew some low-level missions for Montgomery or somebody.
Monty Montgomery, he when he's crossing the Rhine, they had this big old smoke screen. They had a foothold on the east side of the Rhine, and they needed supplies. they so they got these V-24s and loaded them up with whatever an foot army needs, you know, the supplies. And we went in, buzzed all the way across France and part of Germany to get to where Monty Montgomery was, and he had this big smoke screen there. It was about 300 to 400 feet off the ground. And then we got across the Rhine where our drop was, where we dumped. Some guys had to go back in, and sometimes had to push those supplies out of the bomb bay doors. And we had one crew that came flying in. And they got shot down by ground fire, and they took and well, they nosed this thing in. They wrecked the plane, but they didn't. Nobody get killed on the landing. The flight engineer, he had a 45 automatic pistol, and he was going to defend himself. He got out of the airplane, and the Germans saw him with their waving his pistol, so they shot him. He was the only casualty out of the bunch, and the rest of the guys, they put their hands up and surrendered. And the Germans took them prisoners, and about 2 or 3 days later, Montgomery and the paratroopers and all those came in there, and they released these guys. And so these guys wound up being the guys with the guns, and the Germans were their prisoners for a while.
Turned over.
Turned over. Turnabout's fair play.
Yeah.
So, anyway, about 2 weeks later, they came back to the base, and we found out that another it was a navigator and another crew. He was back in the bomb bay kicking stuff loose, and he lost his balance.
Oh, fell out.
And he fell out. So we never heard boo from that, but we know what happened to him. He bounced a little bit when he hit the ground. But that was pretty scary running through that smoke screen.
Oh, I bet.
Because you didn't know whether he was going to run into anything or not, but they all said that there was no obstacles, so we stayed down in there. Then we all had to turn one way. One son of a gun didn't turn the right way, but he never hit anybody, but everybody was pretty lucky.
Yeah.
He was all supposed to turn to the left, and this guy had his left arm, right and left mixed up, and he turned the wrong way.
So he turned out of the formation.
Yeah, well, we wasn't in formation. You couldn't fly in formation on.
Oh, you were just flying in a
smoke
group.
screen. Yeah, we went in at maybe 2 or 3 minute intervals in between. We was probably staying pretty close together until we got close to there, and then going into that smoke screen. We couldn't all go in at once because we probably had a lot of crack up if we would have.
Yeah.
So, but we came out of that all right. Other than that, all our missions were all high altitude. 30,000 feet. We went to Berlin 4 times, and one day the weather forecast said that there's going to be clear or cloudy weather. It's going to be cloudy. Most of the time it was cloudy over Germany. And so we got over Berlin that day, and the only clouds we had was flak.
Flak, yeah. Oh, wow.
I'm telling you, it was clear as a bell. And then them gunners down there, they could zero in on us. We came back with holes in the airplane.
Yeah.
And that day, I missed getting a Purple Heart for the simple reason that on the outside of the airplane, on the pilot and co-pilot side, there was about a 4/4 sheet of steel. They put it on there. On my side of the airplane, there was a big dent in it when we came back. So that piece of that flak was coming right at me.
Right
that
at,
thing
yeah.
turned, yeah. But we had the tail gunner. Yeah, it probably missed him about 6 feet, and there was a big hole in the airplane back by the tail gunner.
Back in the back.
And we had 4 or 5 holes in the plane when we came back. But that's the only time we was ever hit in all the way through.
And you were flying the plane?
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you a major then?
Oh, no. I was just, I came out of over there a first lieutenant.
Okay.
And became captain while I was in the reserves, in the same way as major. I was still
When
in the
you were
reserves.
promoted in the
Yeah.
reserves.
So
Well, that's pretty terrific. Now so you came out of the war as a first lieutenant,
yeah.
or a captain maybe, and then okay. Now you got some medals or citations or
Oh, if you want to call them that, we got a air medal. This
Let's
thing,
see that. Show that to
this
us.
thing right here. Forever 6 missions we flew. Whether you did anything spectacular or not, you got if you
Well, you
just
survived.
flew the medal. Yeah. So I got
hold it up so Ruth can.
I got the air medal, which is that thing, I guess. And then being as I flew 18, all I had was 18 missions, so I got 2 clusters on mine. So.
Yeah.
And then
So that's the air medal you got.
yeah, that's what they said was the air medal. I never put it on nothing, so a lot of these medals, these things that these guys wear, they don't mean a thing. You see these generals with the whole
Oh yeah, no, they got a whole
yeah,
chest
that
full of stuff.
whole full. A lot of them don't mean a thing. It means that you happen to be stationed at a certain place at a certain time, so they give you a medal for
Yeah.
it. Or not a medal, but in fact, when I was over there in England, where we had to take a bunch of what we call flak happy guys to rest and rehabilitation or something like that, and they gave us a plane that knocked down. I mean, it no armament, no nothing like that. Made it so it floated good. So we were supposed to be the pilots and co-pilots and stuff of that airplane. I got in the thing. Ansel was a pilot. I was supposed to be the co-pilot, but another guy insisted on being co-pilot, so he got in the seat. So I didn't have anything to do with it. But we was going to pick somebody up at another airfield. It happened to be an English airfield. And we came floating in that thing, and normally came in and horsed back on the deal, to land the thing. The dang thing just wouldn't pay off. It just kept afloating because it was used to our armament and everything.
Oh,
you know. And so the thing kept afloating, and we came across this one little knoll, and it paid off about that time, and there was the end of the runway. So squealed the wheels, and it didn't blow a tire, but the nose wheel dropped into a ditch at the end of the.
That close to being the end
and folded the nose wheel back. So we got to stay with that English base for a couple of days while they repaired that thing so we could take it back. And it comes right down to it. That made it so that I was on an English base for 2 days. So they figured I was eligible for another one of them daggone ribbons. That's why I say they're just bragging. A lot of them is just bragging ribbons. It didn't do nothing, but
yeah.
So I didn't get you got all that. Old Andrew made dang good. That's my first pilot. He says, you get your name off of that damn flight list as being the co-pilot, because that's going to go on your record. As far as I was concerned, I didn't care. He could have left it on there. But old Fox, he nosed in there, so we changed my name off as a co-pilot and put it in. So if I'd have stayed in the active service, I would have added to my record later on, but it didn't.
Yeah.
So we didn't ever get those guys to rest and rehabilitation. We flew back to the base, and we never got a chance.
Oh, we never got rid of them.
Well, somebody else came and picked them up, but we wasn't eligible to go to the rest of it.
Oh, okay.
So we had to go back to
How
duty.
many hours would you guess you flew? Did you know what your total hours were?
I don't know what the total hours, but every mission was, I think the shortest mission was about 8 hours, and the longest was about 12.
Wow, is that right?
Yeah, and
That's a lot of time.
you needed to use the pitot tube once in a while.
Yeah, I bet. Get a little.
In a way, we was always wanting to get this 8-hour mission. That's what we called Bielefeld. It was what we called it a milk run.
Yeah.
No flak, no nothing, and I don't think these bombardiers ever intended to hit the darn thing. It's because you get credit for a mission, and there's nothing there, no fighters, no nothing. And one night, the English people, they ruined it for us. They hit the thing right in the middle and blew it all to pieces.
Oh, really?
It's a viaduct is what it was.
Oh, and then you were
should-
trying to knock it out and they kept missing it, huh?
They kept missing it because a viaduct isn't very wide, you know.
Right.
And, yeah, one night we were supposed to fly this mission and start out about 4 o'clock in the morning. They'd get us out and then brief us on the mission and stuff. And we always take off about daylight. And the guys in our barracks, there was four crew officers to the crew, and the 4 crews in our Quonset, I guess is what you call it, where we was at. And the other crews, they would not shut up. I hollered at them a couple of times to shut it down, because we got to get up early in the morning, and it's about 10 o'clock at night already, and you know that makes an awful short night out of it. And they just kept on going. They didn't pay attention to me. So I got my 45 out, and I shot up through the ceiling. I never heard boo out of them since. That shut them up. But at least we got a little sleep that night. That's the only shot I fired in the war.
Was that the only one in
The only shot I fired in
the war? It was quiet that outfit down.
Yeah.
Well, that's good stuff.
And a lot of these people, they'd find out that a crew, you know, if they flied enough over there, they'd get flak and stuff, and we call them flak happy. They get real antsy. Some of these ornery guys there, they go at night time, they'd take a board on these quonses or corrugated metal on the outside, and they'd run that board down like a crrr. And some of them guys would just hit the ceiling, I'm telling you. They never pulled that on us, but some of them guys did that.
Really get nervous, huh?
Yeah, they got, yeah, let's see if I can maybe shut that thing off for a minute here. When I was down at the cadets, I was walking around the base down there, and there was a ball game going on. And old Enos Slaughter was down there. He was selling war bonds and stuff like that. And he hit this ball at me out there, and I got to shag a couple of balls at old Enos Slaughter. I could always say, well, hell, I played with Major
Well,
League.
right.
He was selling war bonds. And then one night, they had this big rally to sell war bonds. They had about 10 girls, young girls, pretty gals up there on the stage. And anybody could buy a war bond, and they could go kiss one of these girls. And I bought a couple of war bonds, but I never went up there. I got old Enos Slaughter to go kiss the girls for me.
Good for you. That's real patriotism.
Oh, that is, yeah. And then also while we was down there on the cadets, so the group that I was in, we did a lot of marching, to the rear march, to the flanks, and all that stuff. We had a kid named Seymour Slotnick, and he was real good at calling off those signals for us to do. And we took all the marching deals while we was at cadets down there. They give us 2 or 3 weekend passes because we was the best marching bunch in it. And of course I was the smallest guy in our group, so I was tail end Charlie. And when he said to the rear march, well, you know, that put me out in front. Yeah, you know, talking about tail end Charlie, when we flew these missions, and we was most of the time there's about 12 planes in a flight, and we was always tail end Charlie. There's two tail end Charlies, you know. You have this 3, 3, 3, you know, like that, and we was clear out on the end. One day we had a new lead crew. They were just breaking them in, and these guys turned one way, and we was on the outside over here, and that made it so we had to speed up in order to keep up with it. And all at once they turned back, and they turned back too dang quick. That's what beat everybody coming right into us. So we pulled back when got out of the way because they was coming right at us. We got up a little bit above them so they wouldn't run into us. And then when, of course, we throttled back to slow her down. Then we put the throttles forward again. The damn two engines ran away. It was.
Oh,
so I
really?
suppose it put them up too fast because the props ran away. Well, that's just like putting on your brakes, you know. And so we lost altitude. We were going from 30,000 feet to, by the time we got the motors working again, we was down to 5,000 or 15,000 feet. So, of course, the guys went off and left us because we was messing around down there. So the only thing we had left to do was to go back home. So we wasn't going to take those bombs back. So we just opened the bomb bays and dropped them. And the guys, the gunners back there says, you know what we did? We hit some farmer down there. He had a donkey cart. And all one minute it was there, and the next minute it was gone. So we must have hit him dead center. So some poor farmer
Got zapped.
Yeah, he got zapped good.
But you don't want to pack those bombs in when you land, do you?
Oh heck no!
That's a bad.
No. Well, another incident while we was over there, we was taking off with a load of bombs in the early morning, and somehow the pilot take it off. Now I was co-pilot. I was in charge of the throttles and stuff like that. And we got it going good, and he says throttle back, you know, take off some of the power. So I started pulling back on the throttles to take off some of the power. Hell, the instrument didn't show any RPM reduction. So I kept pulling back on the cotton picking thing, and pretty soon it was getting kind of squishy.
A little mushy, huh?
And our engineer reached up and hit one little button on the not the dashboard, but there's a little thing in between the two pilots. And it showed us that we was about at half power. And so
You weren't getting your RPMs
that's right.
showing up, huh?
So I was coming back on the throttle, and it was actually slowing her down, but it didn't show on the instruments. And I was watching those instruments to get to the right RPM. And if he hadn't have done that, we'd have probably nosed in on that, because he caught that. You know, I had no idea I have no idea how that switch got turned off or anything. So another.
Well, they have switches like that, you know. Hell,
Yeah, and that's what those engineers are for. They know what they're doing, like switching. They change fuel tanks and all that stuff. That's what they're for.
What did the guy do when your engines spun out on you? What do you have to stop them and then try to restart them?
Yeah, you got to feather them.
Right.
And see, they're at an angle like this. You know, they're going around. They pull air. So in order, when they run away, they go so fast through that they don't bite any air. It just like a brake. You're running into a wall.
Yeah.
So you got to make those props come so they split the air this way. Then you bring them back in. And then the air coming by will start the engine again.
Oh yeah.
And so
yeah, I didn't know how that was.
It took us about 15,000 feet in order to do that, to get them back started.
Yeah.
There was two of them there, so we still had two engine power. So.
But that's not enough power to really do much.
No, well, you can come in on two engines. on a B-24, you come in on 2 engines, but it makes it harder. Another time when we was, now we wasn't in on this, but one of these guys, we was going down the, or they were going down the bomb run, and the group of, they evidently wandered in underneath of a group that was up above, and they were dropping their bombs. And one of these bombs came down, and B-24's got 2 tails. It went right past the rear gunner back there and cut that one of those. He brought that plane back. It didn't knock him out, but he had to land at the emergency landing. He saved the plane, but that was scary. But I didn't happen to me, but some of our group over there.
Yeah. Wow.
So you had to kind of lead plane. You had guy. They should be watching, where they're leading everybody. So evidently somebody didn't do what he's supposed to.
Wrong altitude, wrong place.
Yeah, well, I suppose they was 500 feet above them or something coming in under them. They're all bombing the same dang place.
Oh.
Yeah, well, maybe shut that thing. Yeah, they issued us this thing when we was in cadets, and that was for an overnight kit for passes and stuff. So we'd have something to shave with and brush our teeth with and all that stuff. I never did get too many passes, so I never did use the darn thing.
We're glad, It looks like you got something in there that you don't want to use anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, there's a comb that I might be able to use.
Yeah, sure.
Of course, I'm getting kind of bald now. So. Okay. Well, this is the crew. That's the crew that I was co-pilot on. And see, I think it's right here. There's Matt Ansbro. That's the pilot. Then there's me. Then there's Lindy, that's our navigator. And by the way, he was chose to be lead navigator. He navigator on 2 or 3 missions. He was that good. He was real good. And then the bombardier is off to the side. That's Chris. Harold Lee Chrisman. We always called him Chris. Then on this side over here, let's see. That's our ball turret gunner, Shorty Bob O'Farrell.
O'Farrell, okay.
O'Farrell. And then our engineer, Archibald Brierly. And all the while he was overseas, he never got a letter. So one day the crew got together and they wrote a letter to him. So he had to.
So he had a letter.
So he had one letter, but it was wrote to him by the crew.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. Well, his brother is a Catholic priest up in Canada.
Oh yeah.
But you'd think that they'd write together, but each other.
One another.
They didn't. And then the next one is our radio operator. That is O'Brien. And the next one is our nose gunner. That's O'Kenny Stry. And then the top turret gunner was Paul Nichols. And then our tail gunner, biggest guy on the crew in a little bitty place back there. He was a fullback on a college team down south someplace. Old Mac McLaughlin. And he was real fun to play football with. 'Cause, boy, I'm telling you, he could hit you.
Really pop you a good one.
Really kidding, he could pop you. Yeah. Now, all the officers, all the guys in the front row are still alive. This Shorty, our ball turret gunner, he's dead. I don't have any idea about Briley. He don't write as a civilian, just like you don't write and don't let anybody know as a. Anyway, the radio operator, he's dead, but I had conflicting reports on how he died. Somebody said he committed suicide, but I don't know if he did or not. And then Kenny Stry, he lives up in Montana, And Nicholas, he's dead. That's this one right here. And we don't know anything about Mac. Nobody's heard from him either. So, but there's 3 of them that I know is dead. So, we visited with Shorty a lot of times. Ball turret. It takes a little bitty guy to get it. Ball turret comes out of the bottom of the airplane and it hydraulically goes up and down on there. And you have to set in there and be crunched in like a clam, or I don't know. This picture over here.
Now wait, let us zoom in on that.
Okay. This picture over here is the plane that we flew most of our missions in, Miss Minnie. We had about 12 sorties out with Miss Minnie and about 6 other ones with other airplanes. In fact, it was a different airplane where the propellers ran off on us at that time. And then it was in another airplane one time when Shorty back here, before he gets to the mission part, you know, bomb runs and all that stuff, he was in the waist of the airplane, and we had one motor that was leaking a little bit of oil. And he started belly aching like, the plane was going to blow up, and he finally made so much racket back there that Matt says, okay, we'll turn this thing back. And we got credit for the mission, but Matt didn't, because he got back, see, there's supposed to be 50 gallons of oil in each one of them motors. When we got back, we was just about 5 gallons short is all. So, Shorty, he's bound determined that nothing going to make, because that thing was going to go bad on us. This is another picture of the airplane, Miss Minnie. It's a little bit better photograph, so we decided to show it. So that it doesn't have the bombs printed on it yet. And of course, Miss Minnie on the other side of the airplane has got a pretty girl on it too. So you don't see that.
Didn't see that, did we?
No. Oh. Okay, that Miss Minnie is a B-24, and here's a picture of some B-24s in flight. This plane here specifically, we'll show some more photos of it, but here they're on a mission dropping their bombs.
Okay, wait, okay.
Oh. 2 days later, this plane was, the same plane was on this mission. It was that low-level mission across the Rhine for resupplying Monty Montgomery, and they got shot down by ground fire. There was nobody got killed in the coming down, but when the flight engineer came out, he had his .45 and the Germans shot him. So that's the only casualty on it. The 2 guys in front are the pilot and co-pilot of that plane that went down on that mission with Monty Montgomery. They were captured by the Germans, and 3 or 4 days later, the paratroopers and Monty Montgomery came across and set them free. And this picture shows them with the guns. They're the captors now. They traded places with the Germans, and so they had all those others. That's the prisoners that they was guarding.
Those were Germans.
Yeah, German prisoners.
Okay. Okay. Now this is what is this?
This is a picture of the class 44F that I was with, all the way through cadets, and this is taken down in San Antonio, Texas, where the evaluation center, and I can't name all those guys, but I'm sticking right in here someplace, right there.
So you can zoom in on that a little bit, huh? Okay. This is at
This is at Vernon, Texas.
Vernon, Texas.
Vernon, Texas. That's the primary That's the primary part of flying.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
I think I'm over here someplace.
Yeah, you're right there. We got you. Biggest life. Okay.
Okay.
Cut.
This is at Enid, Oklahoma. That's a basic training, and this is the guys I was bunking with. So it's alphabetically. So this is probably the guys that was in the bunk in the barracks with me, and I'm right in here someplace.
He's right there. Okay.
On.
Now
This-
what's this?
This is the class of Frederick, Oklahoma. That's advanced training, and we was flying 2-engine airplanes. And I think I'm over in this part of the country.
Mhm. Zoom in on that.
This is a guy. These guys graduated as second lieutenants.
On.
This is Bernard E. Wimmer. He's originally from Oxford, Nebraska, and he boarded the train when I did at Denver, and we were practically bunkmates for the whole way through cadets. He became a co-pilot on a B-24, but he went down to the South Pacific, and I went to the 8th Air Force. We still get together, and we just got an invitation here not too long ago of his 60th wedding anniversary. He got married to a gal that he and I met her at the same time in St. Louis. She was mixing up sodas behind the soda fountain. He got talking with her, and they had him hit off real good. So
Okay. Well, now you got finished with the Air Force,
yeah,
and you mustered out at
Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake. Okay.
It was April or someplace like that. So I came on home, and in the meantime, I'd been writing to Mildred Locke all the time, and we decided on a date to get married. And my final day in the service was June 11th, and that happened to be our wedding day.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
you got
we
married on their last
married
day?
Well, I
Good
mean,
for
I
you.
was still out at the farm all the time. And,
Yeah, sure.
But I was still considered until the last day.
Right.
So we got married that day, and we went on a honeymoon out to the West Coast and around. Went on to Tijuana, Mexico, and rode dang donkeys and stuff like that. We got pictures to show it.
Got proof, huh?
Yeah, I got
Good for you.
Yeah, we went to up to San Francisco, and what still sticks in our mind, we went to get something to eat at one of these drive-in deals, and the waitress came out to we was sitting in the car to take our orders, and some cops drove up. And she didn't want to go over by those cops. She says, I definitely don't want to wait on them. And so we struck up a conversation with her so somebody else could wait on them cops. But she was scared of them. I don't know why, but she was scared. And then while we was out there, we saw these big balloons, these helium balloons, you know, like Goodyear blimp,
Dirigibles.
I guess. First time I ever saw one of them things. We came on back, and we, after we got married, we lived in one place. We rented this one house, and about 2 months later, the guy said that, well, he's going to get married, so he needs a house. So we moved to the little house at St. Peter's, and so we moved into that, and we just got settled there good, and they sold that to somebody else, so we had to move again. And in the meantime, the old Joel, the first place we was at, his wedding fell through for a little while. They postponed it, so we got to move back there. And then when it came through again, we moved to Mom and Dad. We had no place to go, so we lived with Mom and Dad for about 2 months, and about coming on wheat planting time, Keith Bunker came up and wanted to know if I'd help him plant wheat. I'd been his hired man before I went in the service. And I says, yeah, well, I'll help you if I can live in that hired man house you got out there. He says, okay. So we moved into that. That was in the fall, wheat planting time. Then I got a job at the sugar factory, cutting sugar. And I was living in that little house there. One morning I woke up, got up, and a dang car wouldn't start. So I went over to Keith. He borrowed me the pickup. We got to work. And that same winter, we had 30 inches of snow on the level.
Wow, is that right?
I had to spend a whole week in Sterling at one of the hotels down there. My father-in-law had a job there too, so we stayed there. And since then, we've never had a snow like that I can remember. But we got through that winter, and the next spring, Keith came up to me and wanted to know if I would take over farming out, take over there. He says, I'll furnish the machinery, Doc Elf will have the ground, and you get a third of it for the labor. I said, well, heck, that sounds all right to me. So we took up. He said, but I'm going to move to town, and you can move over to this big house, but you got to buy the stove and the propane tank. Okay, well, that took my wages from the sugar factory, so we moved over to there. And we lived there we moved off of there about 12 years ago, I'd imagine. And in the meantime, we had 9 boys.
9 boys, that's right.
Yeah. And the oldest one now is a teacher in San Francisco or Sacramento. Second one is a salesman in around Fort Collins. Third one's got his own engineering company in Greeley. Fourth one is on the farm. When I moved off the farm, he took over. That's Tom. Paul is running the bank. In the meantime, well, somewhere along the line, this guy from Fleming came out to me. I was a depositor at Fleming, First National Bank in Fleming, and he had taken a guy by the name of Matthews. He had just bought into the bank, and he needed somebody on the board of directors. And anybody that's on the board of directors of that bank had to have some stock. So he says, I'll sell you some stock, practically give it to you, if you sit on the board of directors. I said, well, nothing to it. We'll try that. And things kept working out. He sold out to 2 or 3 other guys, and somehow along the line I got control of the dang bank out there. And right now the boy, Paul, number 5 son, is running the thing. And Mark, the number 6, he was going to be the farmer. He never went to college. All the other kids went to college. We had 5 engineers, like graduated engineers out of the bunch. And Mark was going to be the farmer. He took his money that we put aside for college, and he bought a tractor. And he was going along real good. Till he came down a few years ago with Lou Gehrig's disease. So we're still fighting that. And then Ben, he's a doctor of physics and all that stuff like that. He's in lasers, he's in nuclear stuff and all that stuff. He's working in a lab right now that he says is going to hit, stuff he's working on is 30 years down the road, what'll be showing up. And he says if he can't tell me what it is because he'd have to shoot me if we did. So I ain't supposed to tell him. Anyway, he's living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And Tony, he just bought a insurance, or not insurance, a company down in Lyman, Nebraska, in Lyman, Colorado. And it's another engineering outfit. He graduated from School of Mines, and his soil samples and all that stuff. He before they build a big building, they get him in and he tests the soil to see what kind of foundations they have to put in and all that stuff like that. And Ed, the youngest one, he's a vice president of a engineering company in Denver, and they go through all these older buildings and make them modern as far as lighting and heating is concerned to save all that energy. And so Tom right now has taken over the farm. He's dealing with John all the time.
I'm dealing with him.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, somewhere along, back about 30 years ago, another guy came in and we got to talking, and we got together, and somehow or another, I loaned some guy some money on a guard company. It turned out that he couldn't pay it back, so another other guy and me, we took the thing over. We had this guard company. We had 120 employees down in Denver. We had all the guards for Stapleton Air Force. We had the guards for Samsonite. We had guards in a bunch of federal buildings downtown. We had 120 hired on our payroll at one time.
Wow, yeah.
And when I was feeding cows one day, and all at once I couldn't hardly breathe. And it took about 10 minutes for me to breathe again pretty decent. So I checked up, and I went and had open heart surgery, 5 bypasses. And while I was in the hospital, there was some guy from St. Louis came out, a guy by the name of Bunch, and he wanted to buy that guard company. Well, I couldn't do a heck of a lot. We had a manager that was running the thing, and he's one of these guys that whatever 3 or 4 months he went on a binge in about 2 weeks. So there was a lot of times I was called down there to make out the payroll because I was because he couldn't do it. He was disposed, I guess. Anyway, so I sold the guard company to him, and haven't had anything to do with it since. So, of course, I had to sign a no-compete deal, or they wouldn't start up another one for instance. But I wasn't about to go.
You were about to do that again.
I had my hands full out at the farm, and no, I don't know. There's a lot of little incidents came along. I don't know if I should even talk about them. I was out there on the farm, and Keith Bunker decided to sell out, and Doc came out to there one day. Doc Elf, that's John's dad, came out there, and I was cutting feed with a binder, and the canvas busted on it. And I took the canvas off, and I went to Dad's, and he had a riveting machine. I was riveting the things up and working right away, paying attention to what I was doing. Once I looked up, and there was old Doc Elf standing there watching me. And he says, "I like to see something like that." He says, "Make things work." And then he decided that, he says, "If you want to take this over, well, go ahead." So we worked out the deal. Keith sold the machinery, I bought machinery, and I rented the thing from Doc. And he wanted cattle on the place. I says, "I can't afford to buy cattle." He says, "Just buy the darn things and come to me." Well, I did. I bought cattle, and then I'd go and tell him how much I spent, and he'd give me the money, and I'd cover the dang check. So we went into the cattle business together. He got half, I got half, and He's always, well, I would consider a second dad as far as I was concerned when he did it. So, I didn't buy any of the equipment on Keith's sale. The first summer that we was married, Dad had an old combine, a Malden combine, pull type, 12-foot cut. And he said he'd sell it to me. So I took that combine and I went out and I custom cut. And I paid for that combine, custom cutting during that first summer. And I had saved, I guess, somewhere around $9,000 through my Army career. I blew that on some tractors and stuff and the equipment out there. So we got started farming. Been there in the family ever since. So.